Hi everyone, it's Erin. I'm finally back. Yay! And today I'll be replicating this piece of adorable concept art made by Mary Blair for Disney's Peter Pan. And I did this piece in my last Zoom paint night. You can see the students' work here, and yeah, everyone did an amazing job. It was a really fun piece to paint. I've got my gouache, I've got some acrylic white, I've got some water and my paintbrushes and palettes and a paper towel, and let's get started with the background. So this background is a cool pink. We've got the lighter pink underneath and the darker pink on top in that dry brush effect. So we are using just a tiny bit of true red to warm it up slightly, but it's mostly primary magenta, which is a cool pink or a cool reddish sort of pink. And then I'm adding white to it. And I'll be making two different values. So a higher value, which will be a lighter pink, and a lower value, brighter pink for the dry brush. So what I like to do is I like to mix up the brighter, more saturated, darker value pink first, and then add that color to more white so that they're the same, just one is, I guess you could say, darker and brighter, and that'll be the dry brush color. I mentioned that I painted this with my Zoom class, but I'm also teaching a course. I've been doing a 6-week course every few months for the last, I think it's like almost 2 years now. I'm not sure. It's been a while, but if you're interested, there's information in the description below. It starts on October 12th, and we will spend 6 weeks every Sunday, 2 hours every Sunday, painting 3 different pieces of concept art. So we're doing 2 Mary Blair, 1 Ivan Earl, Halloween theme. It'll be a lot of fun. So hopefully you can join me for that. There's only a few spots left, so check it out. But yeah, here we go with the background. I'm using a flathead brush here that's pretty small. It's like a 1/2-inch brush, so I could go bigger, but I do like using these smaller brushes for mixing especially, and I realized that my color was too dark. It wasn't high enough in value for that background pink. You can see in the original piece it's quite light, sort of like that light cool bubblegum pink. So I just added some white and then redid the second coat lighter, and then I dried off my brush as much as I could, separated the bristles, and now we're going to do that dry brush effect. So separating those bristles again, and if you've watched my videos, you know this dry brush effect is really about pressure. So you press down hard, and then as you ease on the pressure, you get the texture. And I keep forgetting to sort of like flick my wrist a little bit at the end, like lift up a little bit so that I don't get that darker end of the brush stroke. But it still looks, I think, good enough. The clouds here is white with just a tiny bit of that background pink in it. I'm really allowing my brush to help me create those shapes, by, again, using pressure, squeezing down harder to get a thicker stroke, and then a little bit of darker pink on the bottom there. Okay, now we're going to be doing the background rock sort of formation and the area around the lagoon. So I guess the shoreline of the lagoon. And this is a really I wouldn't say it's a difficult color to mix, but it's a very specific sort of cyan, deep cyan, very low value, dark shade of cyan. So when we say something is a shade, that means we're adding black to it. And you can see here that my color that I've mixed up is maybe a bit too dark, so I'm adding a little bit more cyan and a little bit of ultramarine blue, which is the warmer blue, and a bit more white, and I'm pretty happy with the color. It could have been slightly higher in value, a little bit lighter, maybe a little bit more of the cyan in there. But anyway, going for it. I'm outlining the top of the rock formation, really just looking at that reference, like staring at the reference as I get that top line, and then I start to fill it in. Excuse my camera is a little bit blurry. I kept forgetting to lock the focus, but anyway, so I'm filling it in now. And like the background, I could have used a bigger brush for this section, but I'm just using my number 6 because I'm just so used to it. I love using the same brush for every element of a piece. And now I'm just outlining the bottom of the piece so I can fill that in. Now, as you fill in with gouache, now first of all, gouache, you want it to be that right consistency with just enough water to make it creamy, like melted ice cream. And then as you fill a section in, you don't want to keep stroking over and over to try to get it smoothed out. Although stroking over and over can be great under different circumstances. But in this case, you really just want to smooth it out quickly, not going over and over it. And then with the second coat, you can get something smoother. Now for the rock face in front, this is a much lighter, so a much higher value cyan. So lots of white added in and less of the ultramarine. So it is a cooler, light cyan, just a tiny bit of black in there. So there is a slight tonal aspect to this hue. But you can see my mistake here is that I went for it while the background was still a little bit wet. That darker rock behind was not dry completely, so I do pick up some of that darker paint. It does mix in with the color, and that was my bad. That's my bad because I was not patient enough. But drawing out the outline just like I did with the background rock and getting some nice gestural strokes in there. And that comes with confidence and time, but I do recommend trying it. Like, try to do these lines in one swoosh. They don't have to be perfect shapes, but getting into the habit of doing more confident lines will really help in the long run. Okay, so now I'm going to take some of that lighter blue that I just used, and I'm adding a pretty much equal parts cyan and ultramarine with a bit of black, and we're going to do the lagoon color now, the water color. And oh, look who it is. That's Azuki. That's the cat that I'm cat sitting. I just moved into a new place, but I only was able to spend about a week in my new place, and now I'm cat sitting for almost 3 weeks. And the cat is amazing. I love Azuki so much. But anyway, so I'm painting in the lagoon now, and this color is pretty close. It's a little bit too saturated. I could have gone with something slightly higher in value, maybe a little bit more tonal, so a tiny bit of black in there, more black in there would have been nice. But the color is the hue part of the color, so the actual hue is pretty spot on. It just could have been slightly less saturated and slightly higher in value. Doing a second coat now, you can kind of see that the coat underneath still hasn't completely dried, and yeah, I was not patient. But it works out. I end up doing a third coat. While I'm waiting for everything to dry, I decide to put in some of these little details. So I went back to the pink that I had for the background, and luckily it was not dried out completely. Sometimes I like to spray a bit of water on my palette, or I put a little bit of water in the color when I move on to something else, just in case I need that color again. And with these little dots, you kind of wiggle your paintbrush a bit to make a circle. And I've done the same thing with my flathead. I've separated the bristles like I did for the background, and now I'm doing that dry brush texture on the water. And this is almost black. It does have a little bit of that darker rock color, that grayish blue. And to get the reflection, I go downwards. I really want to make sure those bristles are separated. And then a very light touch to get those nice reflection texture marks. And doing the rock itself, I'm using my flathead brush, which is nice. It gives these sort of nice crisp angles, so you can do like a curved line, but you can also get like a good sharp corner as well. So I like that combination, and then just smoothing out the bottom here so that that reflection has a bit more oomph to it. It was really not making enough of a statement, so I decided to add a little bit more. And now we're going to, I think we're going to do, the ripples around the rock here. These ripples could have been a little bit more green, closer to my nail color, which is, you could call that like a light turquoise or a high value aqua turquoise color. And these are fun to do. It is tough to do like a rounded sort of shape like that. But it takes a little bit of practice and patience, but it worked out. Some of those little sparkles on the water there. And now we're going to do the foliage that's coming off the rocks around the background here. And the color's okay. I could have gone with a smaller brush, but just sticking with my number 6 and getting that nice flick at the end of each stroke so that it has a slight sort of point to it. You can see at the bottom of the rocks here, it kind of blends in to the darker background rock. And so I've taken my brush. I had to remix the color and it wasn't quite right. But once I get the other foliage and the plants and stuff in front of it, you can't really tell. But now here I am mixing up again some of the black, some of the cyan, a little tiny bit of ultramarine, drying my brush out. And then I'm holding my brush at a slight angle here and trying to get some of that very loose, like haphazard kind of texture on the rocks. There's these sort of longer streaks. I'm just doing the edge of my flat brush there. And yeah, that part was fun because it really was like foolproof. You could make it as messy as you wanted. And it was cool to see the students do different sort of versions of that texture. So I put a little bit of texture on the rock as well. And now we're going to make the turquoise color, this sort of light, diminished turquoise, so that we can do the foliage or the plants around the lagoon. And I did these very quickly. This piece, so this is one of those, pieces of concept art that Mary Blair did for Peter Pan. And she did so many of these Mermaid Lagoon pieces that I'm guessing that each one took no time at all for her, that she was just like whipping these out, the genius that she was. But, you can really see how quickly some of these pieces were done. You can sense it in the energy and in the like sort of imperfect shapes. So I'm leaning into that. I'm allowing it to be imperfect. I'm taking a little bit more time and caution doing the mermaid tail because I want it to have the correct proportions. So I start a little bit smaller than what I see, because that way I can start to perfect the shape, and as I perfect it, it gets slightly bigger. Now we're going to do her skin tone, which is a very light, high value sort of peach color, and getting that in there. Yeah, these Mermaid Lagoon pieces are so adorable. And it was kind of a bummer, though, when you see the movie, when you see Peter Pan, the Mermaid Lagoon scene, the mermaids are just so much more glamorous, and like they look, I guess, more like models or like, pinup models. But I love Mary's mermaids. Are just so cute, and they're curvy, and they're, they have like just this cute little faces and these like bigger kind of booties in their fins. I don't know, that was weird, big booty fins, but they definitely have more curve to them, and they're just more stylized. They're just more adorable and unique looking than what ended up being in the film. But it's still a magical scene. It's a really cool scene. Doing the black foliage in the front, those were fun to do. I did get out my smaller #1 brush to do this, and these leaves here, much more successful with a smaller brush, because you can press down again so that you get the larger stroke, the larger line weight, and then you can go less pressure to get thinner lines, just a little bit more control, I think, with this brush. So I should probably stop being so lazy and just break down and use smaller brushes when needed. And just a close up here so you can see how I'm doing those leaves. I'm starting with the center, sort of the spine of the leaf, and then building it around that leaf. So here's where, because I was recording this after the class, like during class, I don't record what I'm doing, but I recorded this after, and my phone was so full of footage from other things and from my boyfriend sending me videos of him skateboarding. So there's a lot of stuff on my phone, and I ended up, things would, like, I was recording this and then everything would stop because my phone was full. So excuse the fact that you didn't get to see everything. Even me taking off the tape at this point, my phone was like, nope, you don't have enough room. So oh well. But here is the finished piece. I think it turned out pretty good. It's really, really fun one to do. Let's see some student work. This is one of my students, Aston from New York, who's taken a few classes now. I really love the foliage. I love the color. I think Aston did an amazing job of creating that turquoise. Here's another piece that was done by, I think this one was Alice, and just really adorable work. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you again soon. Bye.